I think you're cooking the right kinds of questions in a different space now. I mean, you're a professor of practice at UCID and you're working in these intersections of research and also being in the field as well. So, in terms of your work in the research space and working with teachers on an everyday basis, what other things that you want teachers to be cognizant of as they're on the ground?
Hmm. This is a really tough question to answer, actually, for me, because in my work with, as you point out, University of Sydney and also with the New South Wales Department of Education, I have the privilege of being able to run professional learning in a variety of different contexts. Particularly, I love working in rural, regional, and remote settings because, like Queensland, New South Wales is a big place, and there is definitely not equal access to professional learning opportunities that all teachers need. And I definitely benefit from so much, not just early in my career, but all the way through, right? And so, in a lot of those settings, I think one of the critical lessons that I learned early on is that it's not helpful. In fact, it's quite counterproductive for me to go in there and just start saying like, "I'm the expert. I know what you need. Here comes my wrecking ball. Forget everything that you knew. I've got all of the knowledge, and if you just do this, your classroom will be great," right? How incredibly disrespectful, actually, to come in with that kind of attitude. And sometimes that's quite unintentional, but it is actually stunningly common in a lot of the professional development that I see. And so I guess I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I do think that one of the most important things that I can do is when I come into a context and I'm going to be working with teachers, before I can answer that question that you just posed to me, I need to do a whole lot of listening and I need to be observing and getting into those classrooms if and when people are ready for me to do that, because that requires a lot of trust and psychological safety to bring people into that space. And for me, I'm extremely hesitant now to say, "Hey, here's what you should do." I mean, I could pick out a few things. I could say, cognitive load theory, fantastic. Growth mindset, so useful. Formative assessment, we already just talked about questioning before, right? But I think that one of the most easy thing for teachers to do is to just become overwhelmed by so many different ideas and practices. And every time I've gone to, say, an education conference, I come back with 10 times as many ideas, strategic projects, different directions I could go in compared to what I have the time, mental space, and energy to actually implement, right? So I'd far more prefer to, rather than just kind of throw out, here are some general things, I'd love to spend the time in conversation, just like we're talking now, to say, "Hey, tell me what makes you tick. Tell me one of the my team members, he loves using the phrase, tell me what's the pebble in your shoe, you know? What's the thing that in your classroom really is bugging you, like, I know this can be better," right? Maybe it's with, in the high potential gifted education space, you're like, "I don't know how to expand these students and enrich their understanding, and I know I can do better than just going faster through the syllabus," right? Acceleration has a place, but it is certainly not the only way. And if someone said to you, "Hey, Kat, I'm going on holidays." And you say, "Oh, where are you going?" Like, "I'm going to Europe." It's like, "Oh, wow, that's gonna be great. Like, you're gonna spend like, 4 or 6 weeks there?" It's like, "No, I'm doing it in 3 days. I'm gonna do all of Europe in 3 days." You would not be impressed, right? It's like you're just missing the richness and the depths and the different alleyways to explore. So acceleration has a place, but I don't think in a mainstream way, it's the main way to do things. So if that was the question you were asking me, then I'd say, "Yeah, let's dig into that," right? But if someone came to me and said, "Actually, it's that I know I've got a lot of students who they've got so many gaps in their learning. Even though we aren't in COVID right now, we are still very much coming out of the impact that this global pandemic has had on all our learning. Mathematics isn't the only subject like this, but it is one of the most hierarchical subjects where gaps in learning are huge problems as you move further on through the teaching and learning progression." And so those are the students who I'm trying to work out. You talked about mathematics anxiety before. These are the issues that I'm wrestling with, and I'd go in an entirely different direction to help a teacher who's wrestling with that. So I know it feels like I'm not answering the question, but maybe I'm answering a different one, and hopefully it's helpful.
I think you are. I think you're answering in terms of, we need to puzzle our practice, but also find ways for top-down professional development to be married up with bottom-up teacher voice in that space.
Mm.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of things to simmer on in that space, Eddie. So thank you so much for sharing about that. I think to close, what is it that you want to encourage teachers about?
Hmm. Where do I begin? I'd probably pick up 3 notes that are sitting right at the front of my, mind. I'm thinking about hope, I'm thinking about collaboration, and I'm thinking about, research and evidence. Actually, I'm gonna do them in reverse order if that's okay. But I think that's the order of importance, which is I'm gonna do it backwards. So, research and evidence. We talked about briefly before about internet and social media, and it is great having access to so much that you can just Google things. You can find so many helpful blog posts, videos, conference webinars, all those kinds of things that can expand our thinking, right? But it can be very overwhelming, right? And so, what I want to commend to everyone is to, and particularly, I know for mathematics teachers, reading words that come in sentences and paragraphs is not our natural, happy place. But I would also say that even if you're not a mathematics teacher, a lot of us, it's been a long time since we entered the classroom and have actually looked at something, read something, or listened to something that's deeply challenged our practice. They say one of the most dangerous phrases is because we've always done it that way. And there are so many things that we actually know. Let me just speak from a mathematics point of view. In mathematics education, there are things that we've known for 30 plus years that are effective or less effective. And yet, we still cling to these ways that we learned ourselves in the past. And so it becomes our default. And so, even though there are better alternatives available, we just kind of stick to this old path, right? And the way that we shake ourselves out and explore new things is by engaging with the research and evidence. And I think this leads on to my second point about collaboration. I encourage people to do that. Pick up a book like I'm thinking about, say, for example, Craig Barton's How I Wish I'd Taught Maths, right? Or if you're a leader, pick up like Jim Knight's Impact Cycle, right? Like
Or Eddie Wu's World of Maths.
I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. And frankly, I can think of so many other things that are real helpful. But pick up something, anything, right? And don't feel like don't do the New Year's resolution thing where you like bite off more than you can chew. If you pick something up, like start at something easy, listen to a podcast that really dives deeper into something that you haven't met before, but don't go into the 3-hour long episode if you've never done this kind of thing before. Start at something more digestible and just challenge your thinking and then have a conversation. This is the collaboration part with your colleagues around it. I think that sometimes we can often feel that I don't have time to have these in-depth conversations with my colleagues around me. There's this paper by Coburn and Russell. There are a couple of researchers who were looking into teacher social networks in the US. And one of the things they noticed was teachers talk all the time. That's great. But often the content of their conversation is extremely superficial, right? And it's not as though superficial is bad. Chatting about your weekend is not bad. You're having making sure you ask someone to do a bunch of extra photocopies for you, or where's the assembly? What time's it finished? Like, those are not bad things to talk about, but they're superficial in that they don't really help us get better at what we do in the classroom. They don't expand our pedagogical horizons and expose us to new ways of doing things. And so what I would commend is to have those deeper conversations. And what I would say is to those people who feel like, I don't have time for this, I don't think we have time not to, because I know I've taught ways in the past that were really inefficient ways of teaching. And I felt like I was working really hard. I was, by the way, but I was doing it in a way that actually was hurting myself. We teachers are so time poor. We don't have time for that, right? Life is too short to only learn from your own mistakes. You got to learn from others as well. So find a mentor, find a peer. Sometimes you got to look outside your own school. I mentioned regional, rural, and remote before. I know a lot of maths teachers, and obviously there will be English teachers, science teachers, all the rest who they don't have a faculty in their school. They've got to pick up the phone or message someone. They've got to reach out to a network. Do it. for your sake, for the sake of your students, the cost is too high for us to just teach the way that only we know how. We need to expand. And then I guess because that does seem like a lot of work and I'm commending to people to do something hard, the thing that I want to finish on is about hope. Teaching is tough, but it is so worthwhile. And for me, now is a time more important than ever for our young people to have the generation before them investing in them, passing on to them the tools, the mindsets, the dispositions that are going to help them navigate an incredibly complex world. To be able to go into that world knowing that they have something meaningful to contribute, whatever that happens to be, and to say, hey, I'm the adult in your life who's going to advocate for you and support you and believe in you. I hope every teacher listening has a story in their mind that they can think of for the student that they've made an impact on that no amount of money, no amount of time would replace the influence you've had on that student. For me, I'm thinking of a student who, I won't name her for privacy's sake, but I didn't know that through year 11 and 12, when I was her teacher, she was having an incredibly difficult time. She was wrestling with huge questions of mental health and had an incredibly unstable home environment. And that was expressing itself in lots of really hurtful, negative, maladaptive ways. And I could see from the outside that there were things going on, but I didn't know any of the details. What I did know was that she was someone who wanted to drop down to an easier course of mathematics, but I could tell by the conversations that I had with her, the questions that she would ask, she had it in her to succeed in this course that I was teaching if she applied herself. And I encouraged her to do so. I said, look, it's your choice, but I know you're capable of this, right? Fast forward 2 years, she walks across the graduation stage, receives a certificate from the principal, and she comes off the stage, she hands me a letter. She says, just read this. After we're all gone from here, but just like, thank you, right? And I open the letter afterwards and it says, Mr. Wu, I didn't think I'd be alive today to walk across this stage. And every teacher who I'd talked with at the start of year 11 said, you're not doing very well in this subject. Consider changing to this other subject. And that's not helpful advice when every single teacher is telling you that. And you were the only teacher who was trying to convince me to stay in your class. And I thought, well, maybe I'll give this a go. And so thank you that I'm still here and that I get to move on to the next chapter of my life. And who knows what that's going to entail, but I'm just really grateful that I got to get to know you during these couple of years. I get to work across a system that has incredible reach. I get to have an influence broadly, but diffusely across like 800,000 students and 2,200 schools. And I love having that broad impact. But nothing is as big, I think, as being able to change the life of one student for the better forever. That's an amazing privilege that I'll never get over. And I commend to everyone listening to hold on to that as their hope, because I think we need that hope on those hard days when we're exhausted and we don't really want to roll out of bed, or we don't want to stay up to mark those papers or write those reports. What we're doing has incredible moral purpose and dignity. And that's what I hope everyone takes away and is encouraged by.
I think we're going to end on that note, Eddie. What a beautiful message of encouragement. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your insights, and your expertise with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Kat.